Are we ready? All right, so let's get started. So for those of you who are joining late, that's okay, don't worry about it. You can come in anytime. You can also go out anytime, don't feel obliged to stay here. But this is a talk about thinking differently on what the role of backlogs is for agile teams. Just for my own information and benefit, if you could please raise your hands if you write code. Yeah, about half. If you could please raise your hands if your job is to test other people's code. Where are the testers? There's very few of you. Love you. Thank you for coming. Your job is very hard, and this talk is also for you, the testers. And I guess the other is who manages, coaches, or otherwise supports the other two roles we just talked about. Right, cool. Welcome. All right, so this talk is for all of these three perspectives on software development. It's not just for coders, testers, product owners, scrum masters. It's for all, because it is about one of the core aspects of agility, which is to find better ways to do what we are doing, right? For those of you who came late, you can still join our Slack. This is for you to ask questions, get support, share your thoughts, learn about what is going on in the Agile community. For example, I have a channel there where I'm sharing information about a talk that I'm preparing related to portfolio management and how we can't use roadmaps or structured planning because that's totally useless and self-destructive. And the talk is going to be about using simulation to do portfolio management. Right? So that's one example of some stuff you can get access to immediately. The talk is going to be in Munich at the end of January for OOP 2024, but you can get all of the materials already now. The talk that I'm going to share with you today is based both on my experience as well as on the results of a survey that I made to my community, right? The people who follow the podcast and that I communicate with regularly. And we will talk about what are some of the things we see the community experiencing when it comes to backlogs. So let's start. Some say this is the first requirements document in history. We can clearly see a hierarchy of tasks and epics and a little bit of non-functionals here. And this was potentially done at the request of the tribe chief as clear instructions on what animals to get and which ones were more important, right? You could think about it that way. This is another requirements document. This one is for IP, the original IP. This is RFC 791 from September of '81, and it is 45 pages long. How many of you have ever worked with a requirement document that was 45 pages or less? Not more, or less, right? And then how many of you have worked with requirements documents that were closer to 100 or more pages? Yeah. Any system worth developing is going to be 5, 6, 1,000, 2,000 pages long if you're going to write the requirements down, right? IP was simple enough, and the internet works on it, and it was only 45 pages. But system requirements documents have a specific structure. If you went to university and learned about requirements management, you will see something like this. There's some introduction, some context, the functional areas, non-functional capabilities, the purpose of the system, and think about this. They talk about the system. Of course, today, if you go to a product owner and they talk to you about systems, you're going to tell them, what the hell are you talking about? You're supposed to tell me what the customer wants, not what the system should do. That's my job. Well, when I started developing, that was your job. And I'm not kidding. Developers wrote the specifications. Of course, they wrote them with the help of business analysts and so on. But you wrote the specifications. In fact, a major breakthrough on requirements management was use cases, because they compacted so much information in a graphical, easy to understand, and also easy to grasp because it fit into one page, right? Think about that for a second. YouTube has tutorials for everything, right? How to unclog your sink, how to fix your car, and also how to write requirements documents. So if you want to look at it, this one is 25 minutes, and it's a tutorial on system requirement specification. But that's only one type of specification, because there's also the PRD, product requirements description or document, and the MRD, the market requirements document. And in most companies, until very recently, historically speaking, you had to have all of those documents before you could even start the project. Can you imagine how much effort, time, and mental capacity was used on just getting paper? Well, it was mostly digital, but eventually you needed to print it out. Paper filled with characters. Because especially the developers and the testers in the room know nobody looked at that damn thing afterwards. Because once you started working on the code, it had a life of its own. In fact, we even started a whole movement that was against documentation, right? Agile for the win. While there are many different types of requirements, as any requirements engineer worth their salt would tell you, and therefore we need to have these different perspectives, because otherwise we don't really know what we are doing. In fact, we were so strict on that we even had requirements document reviews. Talk about wasting time. 5, 10 people in a room reading through a document, making sure all the commas were in the right place. That was my life for several years. And of course, we need to consider the different types of requirements. It's not just requirements. There's different specific types of requirements. Many of you will quickly notice that one type is missing from here, security. But today's world is quite different. This is what requirements documents look like these days. This is unfortunately from Jira, but it is also the most commonly used tool, so I use that as an example. And you see, it's one-liners, they're ordered, there may be some sections, many don't even have sections, it's just one-liners, and you open only the one you want to open, and you detail it just in time. Thank you, Lean, we love you, right? You don't have to write 450 pages of specs before you get started. Also, unfortunately, you don't have to write 450 pages of specs before you get started. Developers and testers also regret that aspect, although it saves us enormous amounts of time. So we've come a long way, and we found many alternatives to collect requirements. Let's see just some of them. Right? Before we had requirements documents, that was it. There was 3 types of requirements documents, different types of requirements, but there was 3 documents. That was it. Now we have Lean Canvas, Lean Startup Experiments, customer or user journey, empathy maps. We have so many better tools today to do what we used to do in the requirements discipline before. Oops. And this is even an interesting aspect that many of us don't even think about, because for us it's kind of native. It's like the air we breathe. But we used to have tools whose job was to trace the changes in requirements all the way down to code. This is DOORS, not the rock group, the requirements traceability tool. I used to use Lotus Notes when I was working for a major telco company, which was 100 times worse than DOORS, but also about 1/10 of the price, if I remember correctly. But the job of this tool is to make sure that the requirement has a specific portion of code assigned to it, so that you can track changes to the code based on the requirements, and you can do the forward and backwards traceability. Today we get that for free, right? If you use GitHub or GitLab, you will have this for free, right? You can cross-reference everything. Every small change is cross-referenced between all the tools that you use, if you integrate them, right? And if you just use, for example, GitHub and nothing else, if you don't use Jira, that's for free. It's there. We truly live in a beautiful world, don't we? I don't know about that, though. And there's reason for it, and I'll try to explain that. And I'm also going to give you clear solutions. But before we dive into the part of why backlogs suck, and they are the ghost that is coming to kill you, let's not forget where we started. Many of you are in companies that are just now hiring project managers. Project managers want to get you back to this type of documents because it makes their life easier. Talk about the tail wagging the dog. Project management is slowly destroying software industries, starting with the most expensive and most critical software industries. I'm a project manager. I know what I'm talking about. I worked many years as a project manager, and I still call myself a recovering project manager because I know how easy it is to fall back to those practices because they're so simple. They're just appropriate for predictability. So let's not forget, as I dive into why backlogs are such a bad idea, let's not forget that there's the risk of us going back to what doesn't work at all, which is the old school requirements management discipline. All right, but now we can take a little bit more fun perspective and ask, are backlogs really that good? Because you see, for many of us, working with backlogs today feels like this. It's too many things, and they're all burning, they're all urgent. Why haven't you developed this, John? Mary, this isn't ready yet. Why is that? Anthony, you promised me this last week. We have to have an escalation meeting. Daily meetings turn into status meetings. Have you done this yet? This is how it feels for many of us to work with backlogs today. Now, let me be very clear. It isn't necessarily because of backlogs, but backlogs aren't helping. So we need tools that literally take us out of this mode of operation. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. So backlogs were a little bit of training wheels on our agile bicycles, and they actually made sense. If you think about Scrum as it was originally defined, a set of patterns, right? It's not even very long, a few pages, easy to explain. Scrum also had a role that was critical to make backlogs work. That was the product owner role. Many of you are probably not old enough to know that the product owner was the single wringable neck. It's not fashionable to use that term, but that was the core aspect of that pattern. The product owner was fully responsible for the backlog. Today, that's not the case anymore. So we have to ask, is backlog still the right tool for us? I mean, it was a good set of training wheels, but we definitely need something different. These are 5 problems, the top 5 problems I got from a survey I did to my community, and I asked them, regarding developing software and allowing your team to be a high-performance team, what is the single biggest challenge right now? And these are the solutions. Backlogs make it hard to see the big picture. In fact, they make planning harder because there's way too many things to consider. Oh, and by the way, don't get me started on the whole concept of the deep backlog. Remember in the good old times when we had the user stories at the top, right? They were kind of granular, well understood, and so on. Then as you went down the backlog, you had like fuzzier things, eventually epics, like big boulders, whatever. That is such a stupid idea and so self-destructive, it's not even funny anymore. Because of course, why does the team even need to be exposed to crappy ideas that will never even become relevant? Why are we wasting brain cycles on literally brain farts? It's okay for the product owner to keep that in their own list, whatever they want to do with it, but why bother the team? And why do we need to order the 450 items that we have in our backlog? Why? We're only going to work in 10 to 20 in the next year anyway, right? So it's too large to handle is also a very common problem. Makes it hard to manage strategically. This is similar to the first one, but this one relates to the fact that once you have enough items on the backlog becomes the driver of the work and not the strategic thinking, right? It changes how the team, the product owner, and the stakeholders look at the software. And in fact, the larger the backlog, the larger the pressure on delivering. Because God knows how many items we still have to come to the team. Come on, guys. Type faster. And one key thing, backlogs were introduced to make prioritization absolutely crystal clear. That was one of the original goals of backlogs. And the answer to the survey is, does not make prioritization easy, in some cases, not even possible. I give you a very simple example. How are you going to prioritize a user story against an epic? They're not the same currency, right? And when you start thinking about it, you go like, yeah, that makes sense. And then you go to your backlog and you say, shit, our backlog is exactly as bad as Vasco said they would be. This is not your fault, though. I'm not blaming you. This is what backlogs lead to. This is the natural inertia movement of using a force-ranked list of items. So don't use it. I'm going to talk about the alternatives in a second, okay? I'm not just throwing the backlog to the garbage. I'm also going to give you alternatives. But it's important to throw it to the garbage because it is making your life harder. It is making planning harder. It is making thinking strategically harder. And it's overall making you slower, confused, overburdened, burn out. And we have to be honest, right? Like, we're agile, right? One of the first things we say in the manifesto is we're discovering better ways. And as Marcus said yesterday, the people that wrote the Agile Manifesto got together 15 years later and they said, we're still discovering better ways. And I mean, honestly, our industry is in its first few years. Historically, we are not even at toddler age. We don't know how to develop software yet. We know how to write code. That's not what I'm talking about, right? Writing code is easy. Most of it is mathematical problems. So we're very good at that. But mathematics has 2,000 years of experience. Writing code is a collective sport. It's a social, complex problem. It's not just writing the code. If it were writing the code, we'd be fine. If it were testing the code, we'd be fine. It's understanding business problems, communicating those business problems, validating assumptions, understanding how to structure, plan, and execute ideas that are completely abstract when we get started with. This is a very seriously difficult problem. People don't think about this, but developing a large software system today is orders of magnitude more complex than building a skyscraper. Just look at the average project delays. We're a lot more delayed on large software projects than we are on skyscrapers. That should tell you something. Also, there's a lot more people involved developing a large software system than there are in developing a skyscraper or a very complex bridge or whatever, right? These guys, they work with physics. We have thousands of years of experience with physics. We don't even have hundreds of years of experience in creating large teams, working on fuzzy problems, trying to discover what actually works in practice. We're just getting started. We're just getting started. And it's good to have that mindset because being humble and being willing and ready to discover is what makes us agile. That is the core of agility, right? Quick feedback cycles, learn fast, forget what doesn't work, try something new. Turn the practices all the way to 11. Get better, and then the next day, get even better. And then the next day, get even better. And that's what I'm trying to do here. Backlogs were, and that was the first part of the talk today, backlogs were an immense step forward compared to the requirements engineering discipline that people still get taught at school today, for God's sake. but they're not the best thing for us right now. We need something better. So, what would a solution look like? When I think about this problem, this is my perspective. You may have a different one, that's fine. But when I think about this problem, what I'm looking for is something that gives us a focus on execution with simple and effective decision making, helps us focus on improving team performance, because team performance, remember the social complex problem? Team performance is actually one of the biggest problems in large system development. It is also in small system development, but in large system development, it's even more of a problem. Allows us to achieve clarity of purpose so that we have clear, goal-driven decision-making. This is extremely important, as we will see as we move forward. And to focus ourselves on value, value-driven product development. So what we need is a way to manage requirements, demands on our teams that allows them that focus, as close to one-piece flow as possible. If you didn't see Marcus's talk yesterday, check out the donkey picture when the talk comes out on YouTube. It's a very important point. Then getting better, right? Always getting better. That's one of the core aspects. We're still in the infancy of software development. We need to get better. Clarity of purpose. Why do we do what we do? So that we can make decisions quickly. And value-driven way of working. So measuring the impact of our work, AKA the actual feedback cycle, right? Testing is not the most important feedback cycle. It's a critical cycle, but the most important feedback cycle is actually showing something to the users, to the market, and getting the feedback on that. So how do we achieve that? So the first big challenge is find and deliver value, not more features. Backlogs put us right here, but what we need is this. Find and deliver value, not more features. So how do we do that? We need a process to quickly find what are the value options and quickly validate those options. Unlike some people do. Many people still do a lot of software in the ivory tower type of development. Even agile teams do this, right? We're going to launch a product, it's going to be a success. When was the last time you got feedback from the market? Here's an example, Lean Startup. Lean Startup already offers a lot of thinking models and tools for us to do exactly that. Quickly find value options, quickly validate those value options. How do we achieve performance? Remember, we are in the infancy of software development. We need to get better. We're just learning how to do this. So the biggest obstacle to performance when it comes to the use of backlogs and the requirements management process in general is that too much time is spent managing outdated backlog items. And this is easy to prove. Just think of the size of your backlog, and now imagine that you need to write emails, answer questions when somebody crosses you in the corridor, have useless Zoom meetings, reply to Slack messages about each and every one of those items because they aren't there if no one wants them. Right? I did this exercise with a team that I worked once, and every month they spent one person a whole week, that's 40 hours, just managing the useless crap they had in the backlog. Stuff they would never ever get to. Right? Talk about inefficiency. So we need a process that values delivery, getting something to the market over backlog management. That is not to say that backlog management isn't important. That is to say that our process should focus ourselves on delivery. Delivery should be the first goal for everything that we do. But we are not delivering very much, are we? Right, I talked to a group of developers. I don't know if any of them is here today. I talked to a group of developers yesterday, and I saw, what is the biggest problem you have today? And they said, well, it's, this project planning and project management stuff, and also the people issues. And then as we were going through the conversation, I found out that they had a team that was too big. That was their words. It was too big, so they had to go to 3-week sprints, from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So now they've tripled or even multiplied by 10 the length of the feedback cycle. Why? because when you have to coordinate more people, you get less stuff done. When you only get feedback every 3 weeks, you get limited amount of feedback, but now you need to deliver that feedback to a lot more people. That means that there's a lot less feedback per person in the team being delivered. If you think about this for a second, you start to make a little bit of math calculation and show that actually for the average team member, feedback has gone near 0. So here's something that I do with the teams that I work with. I tell them, you only need 2 sprints of backlog items. 2 sprints. Why? Because, of course, 1 sprint is quite obvious. We need to know what we're going to do next. That's what we do refinement on. That's what we do planning on. Second is, there's a few items that are competing for priority. Those need to be clarified. If you don't refine those, i.e. 2 sprints, you can't prioritize, right? First rule of prioritization is you can't prioritize a story against an epic. They're not the same currency. They're different things, right? So 2 sprints of backlog items. That's the size of your backlog. That's it. And then for new products, you start with a vision. I can talk a lot more about what the vision is, but if you joined my Slack, you can text me and I will send you a free course. It's a 1-hour course on how to facilitate a vision workshop with your product owner. You get that for free. Just ping me on Slack and I'll give it to you. And then find the right focus, right, with impact mapping. This is goal-driven decision making. How many of you know what impact mapping is? Okay, the others, you must read about impact mapping. You must read impact mapping. I'm not joking here. And then explore holistic customer journey using user story mapping. How many of you know user story mapping? Okay, great. This is very good. It also gives you the strategic perspective in the long term, like release planning and so on. But this is what you need. This is the most important step in deciding what to prioritize. You need this. You need impact mapping. And for new releases of existing products, you basically do the same, but you start from something that was already there. The story map is very important for the long-term planning that the large backlog was supposed to give us, but doesn't, right? But the impact mapping is about finding the goal, finding the value. So how do we achieve clarity of purpose? So the biggest obstacle to clarity of purpose, of course, is having too many goals. Ironically, also none. Because this is a very common anti-pattern. When you have a backlog that is detailed enough and large enough, the goals disappear. Literally disappear. They are not talked about. How do you know if your team has a goal? They talk about it in every sprint, in every daily scrum. If you're doing Kanban, you talk about it every day. If you're not talking about it, they aren't there. Because we make goal-affecting decisions every single day. So we need a process that starts from a goal and allows us to discover our way to that goal. Remember that software is mostly about discovery. Sometimes it's technology discovery, sometimes it's customer usefulness or value discovery, sometimes it is product market fit discovery. There's a lot of discovery in software. Discovery without a goal is a random drunk dude's walk. Right? You're going nowhere. So how do we achieve this clarity of purpose? We talk about user stories having a Jira task. No, a goal. Every user story needs to be linked to a goal. Every single one. If there ain't a goal for a user story, it's right there in the user story format, to be honest, right? The so that clause is the goal. If there isn't a goal in the user story, it shouldn't be worked on. Give it back to the product owner and say, tell me how this relates to the goal you have for this release. And if they can't answer that question, don't do it. Because it isn't relevant, right? If your release has a goal and you have a user story that has no relation to the goal you have for that release, why would we even work on it? But we do. Why? Because it's in the backlog. So define a product vision and set a goal for the release. This is impact mapping. This is an example. I'm not going to go through this example. You can find Gojko Adzic YouTube talks on impact mapping. You can get the book. It's very cheap and it's very easy to read and it's very well illustrated. So get Impact Mapping, the book. And then the final one, how do we achieve a value-driven way of working? So we don't focus on value because, this is my interpretation, having worked in many industries with many teams. We don't focus on value because we have predefined timelines with predefined features. And this is one example where project management forces us into a way of working that destroys value for our companies. People are being fired today because we still use project management as a metaphor for delivering software. Because, of course, software never gets delivered with project plans. But we get them approved, financed, managed, followed up with project plans. So project management is literally being used as a bloody metaphor. There's no reality. When we develop software, we don't follow project management practice. It's only the project managers who do that. And again, I'm a project manager. I know what I'm talking about because I did that. Okay? So when you start with a predefined timeline and a predefined set of features, you are already away from value delivery. So we need to start with a process that is value-focused, and it has a goal. So what process could that be? OKRs? Oh, no, please. OKRs is just project management applied to the whole organization. It's the micromanager's dream. It's a wet dream for most control freaks out there. Get out of it. Individual goals? Haven't you heard Deming? What the? No. We need value metrics that are derived from business goals and daily experiments that align to that business value. This is so simple when you say it and so hard to put in practice that is incredibly frustrating for me. I've been talking about this for about, I even wrote an article, I think it was 2012, how we did this at one company where I was working. We delivered value that generated 400K plus euros of revenue in 2 weeks. We did that in 2 weeks. We did not know we were going to do that at the start of the 2 weeks. We only knew that at the end of a couple of months, 2-3 months, right? But we were constantly measuring the features. And we even had a kill criterion. We had in the requirements, i.e. the specification, the vision that the product owner gave us, we had a line. If this feature does not deliver this many euros in revenue, we will remove it from the product. This is what we are talking about. This is what agile software development is all about. How many of you consciously and deliberately put a kill criterion on your features? Hands up. Okay, let the record show that only one person raised half their hand. So how do we do that? Well, I have a tool for you. I can go into this tool a lot more after the talk today. I'm going to stay here even after the conference is over. You want to have a coffee, we can talk about this. But I'm going to give you just one example. It's called the business value equation. And here's Amazon's business value equation. The website, not the company, okay? The Amazon website makes money, revenues is the goal, this way. You multiply the number of visits by the conversion rate to the purchase. You multiply that by the average price of such purchase, and you multiply that by the repeat rate of each of the customers. What do you get? Revenue. Here's the cool thing. Now you know what to bloody do. You can say, hey, we're focusing on number of visits. How do we do that? Well, we have to get better ranking on Google. Okay, so how do we get better ranking on Google? Well, we need to rank better for certain product searches. Great, what product searches? Well, there's these products that seem to get a lot of traffic on the website. Maybe we could get even more traffic on that. That's a cool product ownership and product management tip, by the way, which is sell more of what already sells well. That's a lot easier than doing the opposite, okay? So here we go. Now we know what to do. And we even have a clear metric and a very easy way to measure it every single day. This is what Amazon does, right? Why do we have Amazon Prime? Why are they selling more and more expensive items? Soon enough, they will be selling cars and houses as well on Amazon website because the average price. Why do we have all the recommendations on the page? Well, because they convert. And why is Amazon always the first result on Google when you search for a book? That's it. That's what they're trying to do. It's this simple. Now, not all companies have the goal of revenues. Some companies have other goals, but we need to create the business value equation for that goal and then work on those components of that goal. It's not about requirements. It's about the business goal. Oh, and a bonus tip. Why are we spending so much time planning when we could just start delivering? Experiments allow us to do that. Right? If you want to talk to me, I can give you a copy of the No Estimates book where we talk about how can you get started applying no estimates. Right away, you, not the whole team, you don't need to care what others do. You can apply no estimates to your own work. Whether you're a coach, a tester, a developer, whatever you are, you can definitely do that right now. And I can give you the book that explains how to do that. All right, so we're getting close to the end. This is Agile. Let's go through some of the principles and realize how far away we are from that when we use backlogs. The first one, the art of maximizing the work not done. It's the not the word there, right? Backlogs do the opposite. Backlogs maximize the work done. In fact, if you were at Marcus's talk yesterday, you heard about the concept of utilization. What does that mean? Why aren't people working on something? Oh yeah, let's get them some stories. Where do the stories come from? From the backlog. Hey, John doesn't have a story to work on. What do? Put another story in the backlog. Guess what? Mary would need John's help, but John is now busy doing a story that wasn't necessary, so Mary needs to wait. But because Mary is waiting, what do? Put another story on the backlog. It's a self-defeating cycle. It never ends. In my No Estimates workshop, I show you an example. It's not mine. It's Clinton Keith, who's a game developer. And he shares the story of a project they did in 2 weeks that would normally have taken 18 months, a year and a half. And they did it in 2 weeks. And he shows that. He explains exactly how they did that. How did they do that? They did not use a backlog. All right, our highest priority is to satisfy customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. What do backlogs do? They increase the cycle of feedback. Because the more stuff in the backlog you have, the more tempted you are to make the sprints longer, like those developers I talked to yesterday. And that means slower feedback. When you have a lot of stuff in the backlog, you're tempted to grow the size of the team. But delivering more features is not the obstacle to value. It's knowing what value is that is the obstacle to value. Backlogs put us right there into the do more, not do less, and therefore also delay the feedback, not quicken the feedback. Working software is the primary measure of progress, yet many people measure progress by comparing what they've delivered with what? Any ideas? The backlog, right there. It's just like going back to project management, right? Here's the plan, progress to plan. And then deliver working software, the primary measure of progress, deliver working software frequently from a couple of weeks to a couple of months with preference to the shorter time scale. This is probably the one principle that the people who wrote the manifesto would probably change, but they wouldn't change it very much. From a couple of hours to a couple of weeks, I guess, is what they would write these days. So what I'm asking you to do is to apply Agile at all levels. Here's what I do. Always start with a product vision. Use the user story map to keep the long-term perspective on what we are doing and always fit new ideas into the context that they belong to. Use impact mapping to discover the goal for each of the releases before you plan the actual release. So goal-driven, not maximizing features. Use Lean Startup to run experiments. That's a thinking and process model, Lean Startup. And then do customer and market validation, not roadmap planning. I teach teams how to validate ideas before writing the first line of code. If we could do that, we would write 10 times less code, but also 10 times better code. We would get more value delivered faster. Because the obstacle to developer performance today is not writing more features faster. It's not what makes them slow at writing one feature. It's what makes our organization slow at delivering value that can be translated into business value. That is what is preventing us from being successful as companies and organizations. So make products, not backlogs. And one last tip, delete your backlog items. Trust me, your life will improve. Just like Lisa Crispin shared on LinkedIn when I asked about this, she said, it was hard for our PO to delete the backlog items, but it felt great. If you want to know more, I'm around. You can come and talk to me. I'm also staying over the end of the conference, so definitely get in touch. That's my email over there. I answer any questions that you send me. That's one bonus you get from being in my talks. You get to ask questions. There's also the Slack channel. If you guys want to join, I hang out in the Slack channel all the time, and I'm developing a new talk about how to use simulation at portfolio management level so that we don't need to do waterfall planning at portfolio, which is still happening, and even SAFe argues for it, even though they have a disguised Kanban board, which is actually a Gantt chart in the SAFe model. Ridiculous idea, not the Kanban board, but the disguised Gantt chart. Stupid idea. What does it mean to be agile at the team level when the whole company is waterfall? What are we doing, guys? You guys are the future of our industry. So I hope you go and start sharing these ideas, but most importantly, experiment with this yourself. Don't ask for permission, just go and delete the items. Jira has a backup, right? You can always recover them. And what I tell teams is, if something is important, it will come back. So just delete those backlog items. Thank you very much.